Jaya Radha Madhava Sanya Vihari Jaya Govardhana Vallabha Giridhari Jaya Govardhana Vallabha Giridhari Asoranandana Bhagavana Ranjana Asoranandana Bhagavana Ranjana Ramuna Tera Vanachari Ramuna Tera Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Govardhana Vallabha Giridhari Jaya Govardhana Vallabha Giridhari Asoranandana ISKCON New Govardhana Temple ki jai, Contra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, all glories to Madhavaris, all glories to Madhavaris, all glories to Madhavaris, all glories to Shiva and Shigamba. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, Text 37. Ham Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ham Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ham Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Kim va kritakeshvagam adyamasi. Bimo hivadyagat tamam vyomanachat. Yashangri patham ranabuna sehe. Magam gadayas Tarato vichitram. Kim vakidasheshvagam atyamasi. Vimo hivadagatamam vyamam chat. Yashangri patam ranabuna sehe. Magam gadayas tarato vichitram. Kim vakidakeshvagam atyamasi. Bimahivadagatatam yapyam chat. Yashangri patam ranabuna sehe. Magam gadayas charato vichitram. Word for word, Kim, whether, va, either, krita, performed, ageshu, unto the sinners, agam, angry, ati amashi, unconquerable, bimaha, bima, ahayavat, like a cobra, durgatamam, long cherished, Vyamonchat, has released, Yasha, whose, Angripatam, putting on the steps, Ranabu, the field of battle, Na, could not, Sehe, tolerate, Magam, the path, Gadayaha, by the clubs, Charataha, playing, Vichitram, wonderful. Translation of Rosanga says, Translation, please tell me whether the unconquerable Bhima, who is like a cobra, has released his long-cherished anger upon the sinners. The field of battle could not tolerate even the wonderful playing of his club when he stepped on the path. Translation, please repeat. Please tell me whether the unconquerable Bhima, who is like a cobra, has released his long-cherished anger upon the sinners. The field of battle could not tolerate even the wonderful playing of his club when he stepped on the path. Report. Vidura knew the strength of Bhima. Whenever Bhima was on the battlefield, his steps on the path and the wonderful playing of his club were unbearable for the enemy. Powerful Bhima did not take steps against the sons of Dhritarashtra for a long time. Vidura's inquiry was whether he had yet released his anger, which was like that of a suffering cobra. When a cobra releases his venom after long cherished anger, its victim cannot survive. So continuing the questions of Vidura to Uddhav. So many different personalities he's mentioning, and a lot of them are to do with the warriors who fought in the Battle of Kurukshetra. So particularly today, it's a Bhima. So I think everybody's got a soft spot for Bhima, one degree or another. He's quite an extraordinary personality. His name, one of his names, Vikrodara, meaning Herculean eater, one who eats so much. When they were living in a Brahmana's house whilst they're in exile, and it was Draupadi, must have been Kunti before they married Draupadi, so Kunti and the 5 brothers, so they'd go out begging. They were in disguise as Brahmanas, and they'd go out begging, and whatever they brought back for the day, it was divided into half. So one half was divided into 5 for Kunti and the other 4 brothers, and Bhima ate the other half. Like that. So it was described that he had a, like for us, we have the fire of digestion. So known as Jata Agni, the digestion within the stomach. So it's mentioned that Bhima's fire of digestion was like a furnace, it never went out. And he was always, either eating or wanting to eat. So we know the story of Nijala Kodasi, where Bhima, he said, I think he was speaking to Krishna, and he was saying, I just can't follow a Kodasi, I just can't fast like that. So is there anything I can do that I can just do once, and that covers all their Kodasis for the rest of the year? So Krishna said, yeah, you can follow Nijala Kodasi. Of course, Nijal in India is in summer, so no eating, no drinking, like for all day and all night. So that's difficult, but anyway, so that's the special benediction Bhima was given. That if you just follow that one, then all the others are covered. So we know that Duryodhana and Bhima had always had that enmity. Particularly Duryodhana, he was so envious of Bhima because Bhima was unconquerable. He was so strong, and when he'd play with all these other his brothers and his cousin brothers, Duryodhana's 100 brothers, he could never be defeated. He would just throw them around like toys. And so that envy increased more and more. And particularly Duryodhana's uncle, Shakuni, was always encouraging, we have to get rid of this Bhima. There was so much intrigue going on. So we've heard that story that at one point they were down by a river, and Duryodhana, feigning good intention, gave Bhima a special cake. Of course, the cake was poisoned, and so Bhima, he ate it and fell unconscious, and they thought, we've done it, we've finally killed him, and threw his body into the river. But then the snakes in the river came and bit Bhima, and that poison, the venom of their bites actually counteracted the poison in the cake. But then he was taken, I think it was Nishina Gavacha mentioned yesterday, he was taken down to the netherworlds, the Nagaloka, and the king of the Nagas, Vashuki, he also had enmity with Duryodhana, and so he was very sympathetic with Bhima's situation. So Vashuki gave him a special elixir, like special drink, and that gave the strength to Bhima of equal to 10,000 elephants. So he said, you can use this to defeat your enemies, like that. So so many times he got blessings. His strength and his ability on the battlefield was increased with so many different benedictions. Of course, he was originally the son of Vayu and Kunti. So we know the story that Kunti, she got that special because she served Devasa Muni so nicely. Devasa Muni gave her the benediction that gave a special mantra, that with this mantra you can call on any demigod and get a special benediction from that demigod. So just naively as a young maiden, she was just thinking, maybe I'll summon the sun god, Surya. So just as a innocent young girl, she started chanting that mantra, and all of a sudden the sun god appeared. And said, "Oh my God, what have I done?" And the sun god said, "Well, I'm going to have to give you a child, because that's the result of that mantra." But how is that possible? I'm still a maiden, I'm not married. And he said, "I'll give you the child, but your maidenhood will remain intact." So in that way, so Kana was born, and but that was like a special secret. She couldn't bear to admit to anybody that the situation. So she put Kana into a little basket floating down the river, just hoping that somehow or other, he'd be looked after. And which he was. He was found by one couple who adopted him as his son. So that was one secret that she kept practically her whole life, up until at least the end of the Battle of Kurukshetra, when she admitted to Yudhisthira that actually Kana is your older brother. So, of course, with that benediction, when Pandu died, so there was no actual heir for the dynasty, the empire. So at that point, Kunti revealed that she had that special mantra, special benediction. So in that way, her and her co-wife Madri, they chanted that mantra, and this way the 5 Pandavas were born. So Kunti, she chanted the name of Vayu, and in that way Bhima appeared. So that's like the history of how Bhima appeared, along with the other 4 brothers. But so many incidents throughout, because of that enmity between the Pandavas and the Kauravas. The Kauravas, particularly Duryodhana, always trying to kill the Pandavas. And but the Pandavas were relying so much on Bhima's strength to get them out of trouble, and knowing that somehow or other it's Bhima's strength that is going to protect us. So after the burning of the House of Luck, they went into the forest, and there Bhima, he had to fight with a few different Rakshasas, particularly there was a Hidimba and Bakasura. We know the story. Bakasura, he was wholesale eating all the local people, like as a cannibal. So they made an agreement that each month or each week, somebody would have to go volunteer themselves, take a cart of foodstuff, bullock cart, and Bakasura would come out and he would eat the offering, he'd eat the 2 bullocks, and he'd also eat the person driving the cart, like that. So at least only one person was going to be sacrificed at a time. So when Kunti heard that, she offered that Bhima would go. So Bhima, he, enjoyed, as a Kshatriya, they look forward to battle. It's like a sporting activity, full of courage. So Bakasura, when he came out and saw that Bhima was actually eating the whole offering himself, he became enraged and charged towards Bhima and bashing him on the back. And I am Baka, but Bhima completely ignored him and just kept on eating. And eventually he'd finished and washed his hands and said, "Okay, now we can fight." So anyway, eventually Baka was killed. And another Rakshasa, Hidimba, Same situation, they ended up fighting, but this time Hidimba was accompanied by his sister, Hidimbi. And even though Bhima killed her brother, Hidimbi became stricken, romantically attached to Bhima. And she appeared as in the form of a beautiful girl and approached Bhima. And anyway, eventually Kunti gave her blessings that they would be married, I think for 1 year, and after that Bhima would be returned. But the result of that union was Godad. I've heard that pronounced different ways, but Godad. Anyway, so he was like a Rakshasa son. And he was actually fought for the Pandavas during the Battle of Kurukshetra. Even though it was eventually killed, he did annihilate so many of the opposing sides. Bhima had three wives altogether: Hidimbi, of course Draupadi, and his other wife, Valendra, who was she was the daughter of the king of Kashi at that time. So those 3 wives, they had 3 sons. They Godad, Sutashoma, and Savaga. So that was his 3 sons. Krishna had advised the Pandavas that, there's so many kings who are against the rule of the Pandavas, so we should do something about this. So, of course, Jarasandha was one of the main causes of problems. So, of course, the story of Jarasandha, Jarasandha means one who was joined by the witch Jara. Like we have the Sanja, the evening arti Sanja, so it's at dusk. It's like the day is ending and the evening is starting. So Sanda means joining. So, and of course Jara was her name. So there was one king who he desired a son, and he got a benediction from asked a Brahmana to give his benediction. So he did some sort of yagna with, he had 2, it involved mango, and 1/2 of the mango was given to one wife and 1/2 of the mango was given to the other wife. So they gave birth each to half a son, somehow or other. And so the king and the wives, they were sort of discussed with this, and the two halves were throwing into the forest. But the witch Jara came along, and somehow or other she had a little bit of pity on that, and anyway she joined the 2 halves together, and so that was Jarasandha. So we know that Bhima, Arjuna and Krishna, they went to Jarasandha asking to fight, so Kshatriya can never decline a challenge like that. But after many days, Bhima, he admitted that actually I can't defeat Jarasandha. So eventually Krishna gave the hint. He, like with a twig, pulled a twig or it was a leaf apart just to give the hint to Bhima, and that way Bhima was able to rip the body apart where it actually originally joined. And another time, they were in the Himalayas, Kunti and the 5 brothers, and Kunti, or Draupadi may have been there, I can't remember. One flower came on the wind down the mountain, and might have been Kunti, and she became entranced by that flower, and she asked Bhima to get more of these flowers. So he was going up the path up the mountain. There was this huge monkey lying across the path. And of course the etiquette is you can't step over somebody, you need to go around them. So Bhima, being very proud of his strength, he demanded the monkey get out of my way. I think it was just his tail across the path. But the monkey said, I am too old, I am too tired, I can't move. If you want to cross, you move my tail. So eventually Bhima, he tried to pick up the tail and it wouldn't budge. Despite the strength of 10,000 elephants, he couldn't budge that. So anyway, the monkey revealed himself as Hanuman, who was actually Bhima's half-brother. And in this way, Hanuman, he gave blessings to Bhima that he would be successful and victorious in the upcoming battle. And of course, Hanuman, he also agreed that he would appear on Arjuna's flag on the chariot. So during the battle, the Kurukshetra battle, the Kauravas were constantly harassed by the war cries of Hanuman on the flag of Arjuna's chariot. I think on Bhima's chariot he had the flag was a golden lion, I think it was, who was constantly roaring also. So, and before the battle took place, of course, as we said, there was so much enmity between Duryodhana and Bhima, but Balaram had a little bit of a soft spot for Duryodhana. Balaram had trained Duryodhana in the art of club fighting, and discussion was brought up who would be victorious between Bhima and Duryodhana with the club in a club, fighting with clubs. So it was considered, I think Balaram, he mentioned that actually Bhima is the stronger fighter, but Duryodhana was actually more skillful. And of course Balaram, because, he sort of had he didn't want to take sides basically, so at that point he went on pilgrimage, so he didn't want to be there for the whole battle. And but we know that at the gambling match, when Yudhisthira gambled away practically everything, and Duryodhana was just making fun of the Pandavas, and he showed his throat. He pulled up his cloth and showed his thigh to Duryodhana, that you should sit on the thigh of a better man, something like that. And at that point, Bhima, he vowed that he was going to break the thighs of Duryodhana, even though that was like an illegal tactic in one sense, that you should never hit the opponent below the waist. But ultimately, that's what Bhima did. He made that vow and he fulfilled it. And also, Dushashan, he was the one who tried to disrobe Draupadi in the assembly hall. And at that point, Bhima, he vowed that he would rip out the heart of Dushashan and drink the blood. So, according to the Mahabharata, that's what he did also. So, these Kshatriyas, they make vows. It's not a empty sort of promise. If they make a vow, they will stick to it. So I think Bhima also vowed he would kill all the 100 brothers, and ultimately that's what happened. That during the battle, Bhima, all 100 brothers was killed by him. And also Bhima, he was the one who, because with his club, just one swipe of his club, he was able to kill elephants. He was so powerful. And they had Dronacharya on the opposing side. He was so, because he was the martial guru basically, so he was expert in archery, and looked like he was going to defeat at the urging of Duryodhana. Duryodhana was thinking, the Pandavas are your disciples, but don't go easy on them. He was afraid that Duryodhana would have a soft spot for the Pandavas, so he said, tomorrow I'll destroy everyone, basically. So Krishna understood that Dronacharya would only cease battle if he heard that his son Ashvatthama was killed. So Krishna devised the idea that the elephant Ashvatthama should be killed, but he told Yudhisthira to tell Drona that actually your son Ashvatthama was killed. So Yudhisthira, he's known as, he'd never uttered an untruth, so he was very reluctant to do that, but ultimately he was urged into it by Krishna. So eventually, so the Ashvatthama, so Bhima killed the elephant Ashvatthama, but Yudhisthira said, Ashvatthama, your son is killed. And at that point, Drona, he just lost his fire, and Arjuna immediately killed him. So I have heard, I've read different versions of Mahabharata, and some more authorised than others, but one mentioned that Yudhisthira had been condemned because he uttered a lie, but actually it's the opposite way around, that he was condemned in one sense that he didn't follow Krishna's instruction with full faith, because Krishna is ultimately beyond all these morals and ethics. So we see like Yudhisthira and Bhima and Arjuna, Yudhisthira and Arjuna, they were constantly unsure of what they should be doing next, and they were constantly taking guidance from Krishna and different sages. They also had their family guru who was what was his name? Dormya, and so taking advice, but and sometimes completely bewildered. I don't know what to do. Yudhisthira would sometimes be so depressed that this battle is going on, and etc. But taking guidance and shelter from Krishna and other sages. But Bhima, he was always a man of action. He said, "Look, let's just do it. Let's just attack the Kauravas and just kill them all." That was Bhima's mood. Never mind diplomacy. Never mind trying to develop some sort of arrangement, diplomacy. Let's just attack them and kill them all like that. So he was very passionate but very practical in that way. So, because we know the situation when, at the end of the war, Ashvatthama, he entered into the camp of the Pandavas and he killed the 5 sons of Draupadi. And then he fleeing for his life, understanding that everybody's, Arjuna and others are going to try to kill him out of revenge. So eventually Ashvatthama was was captured, and so Arjuna was thinking, let's kill him immediately. And Krishna said, yes, he's killed, the 5 sons. He should be killed. Draupadi, she was very soft-hearted. No, he's the son of a Brahmana. He shouldn't be killed. And Bhima said, just kill him immediately. Don't even worry about these things. So once again, that was Bhima's idea. Don't give any, no compassion is necessary here. Of course, eventually we know that Arjuna, he in one sense killed him and not killed him at the same time. He cut off a lot of his hair and the gem that was the jewel on his turban. Different way, basically insulted him. It was considered a fate worse than death. Insulted like that. So we have the further on in this chapter, actually Prabhupada brings up the question that we had all these, because ultimately Krishna wanted to re-establish the Pandavas as a righteous rule of the empire and remove Duryodhana and others from, of course, Dhritarashtra from the throne. And of course Krishna, he could have done it himself. So Prabhupada brings up the question, why didn't Krishna just go around and kill everybody himself? I mean, ultimately, it was his desire and his arrangement that the Battle of Kurukshetra would take place. And even though externally he acted as a peacemaker, he went to the camp of the Kauravas to try to make peace, ultimately he actually wanted the battle to go ahead. Because in this way, all the Kshatriyas would be in one place and they could be all annihilated at once. So basically that was the conclusion that Prabhupada writes, that this is why, rather than just, or any other method, basically Krishna made the arrangement that everybody was all in one place and be annihilated together. And of course everybody who was killed on the battlefield basically got liberation also. And again, I think he brings up the question, rather than doing it himself, why did he arrange for the Pandavas and other warriors on their side to engage in that battle? So Krishna, he says, actually everybody's already killed by my arrangement, everybody's already killed, but you as my devotees should do it, and in this way you'll get the glory for that. And we see, so many thousands of years later, we're still taking pleasure in hearing about the activities of Krishna's devotees, how they're victorious on the battlefield, and so many other leelas we're hearing about of his devotees. So Krishna is always concerned and happy to have his devotees and also the brahmanas glorified and worshipped in that way. So that comes to mind, I think it was in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, I think. As mentioned, when Lord Chaitanya, as young Nimai Pandit, was getting married, and of course they would give charity to the brahmanas, and so he told his assistants that every brahmana should get 2 gifts. And so all the brahmanas were lining up, but some of them were, a little bit greedy, and they were just making out, they'd got their gift, but they were just making out that somehow or other they've just turned up to line up to get more gifts. And Lord Chaitanya as Super Soul understood this, but just to protect the reputation of the brahmanas, he announced that every brahmana should get 3 gifts now. And the brahmanas, they just felt a little bit ashamed of themselves like that. But the point was that Lord Chaitanya, Krishna, they're always interested in that his devotees and the brahmanas, they're always put in the highest light, and they're not fall into disrepute in any way. And there's also Krishna, ultimately he was the one who killed Kamsa, but he appeared to his devotees, Devaki and Vasudeva, as their son, and whilst Devaki and Vasudeva were in jail, ultimately they spent, I think it was about 17 years in jail, because they had the 8 sons, and the 8th one being Krishna, and of course Krishna had to grow up sometime, so I think it was 17, 18 years altogether. But Krishna, even though he was appearing as a young boy, at any point he could have killed Kamsa and released Devaki and Vasudeva. So you sort of wonder why, Devaki and Vasudeva, they spent 3 lifetimes meditating with the benediction that they would performing austerities to get Krishna as their son. And the result of that was that they spent 17 years in jail. So you sort of think, why should we worship Krishna if we, that's the result. And in the end, Krishna, he just killed Kamsa with one punch. He could have done that at any time. But that was just a leela that he had, Devaki and Vasudeva. They were constantly meditating in separation of Krishna, and ultimately they were released as a result. But so Krishna, we sometimes hear I prayed to Krishna or prayed to God and nothing happened like that. So, it's not that Krishna is our order supplier, and but no prayer ever goes unanswered, but we'll get exactly what we want when we need it, according to Krishna's understanding and not necessarily according to ours. So, some things we may be desiring aren't necessarily good for us. But we need to have faith that Krishna makes the proper arrangement exactly when we need it. And ultimately it's for our, utmost spiritual benefit. So even though the Pandavas, they did go through so much trials and tribulations, ultimately they were victorious. And I think it's in the 8th or 9th canto, Prabhupada used the analogy that he uses his devotees, his advanced devotees, to teach the rest of us different lessons. So even though most of us perhaps, or many of us, if we went through these trials and tribulations that the Pandavas went through, we would have lost faith as a result, because it's just too intense. But Prabhupada used the analogy that when a young girl marries a boy and she goes to live in the house of the mother-in-law. So the mother-in-law, of course, she wants her new daughter-in-law to be trained up nicely, so she can serve her husband, and it's a nice, happy marriage. But she knows she can't be, with her training, she can't be heavy with the daughter-in-law because it's a very new, relationship. So what she does, that when she's training the daughter-in-law, she trains her own daughter at the same time. And if the daughter-in-law makes some mistake, she blames her own daughter. And because her own daughter, because of that familiar arrangement, she just, mutter, she's always on the case. It's not a big deal. But the daughter-in-law is thinking, actually, that's my mistake. I need to try better. So that analogy is there, that we learn lessons from the experiences of more senior devotees, that we might be able to deal with their trials and tribulations in the same way, but we learn from their experiences how to deal with that. So it's just an interesting analogy that Prabhupada brings up. That's all in there. Thank you very much. If there's any questions or comments at all. Yes.
Why did Krishna want all the Kshatriyas killed?
Why? Because they're a burden on the earth. Because there's so much military activity going on, and a lot of the kings were demoniac, and just exploiting and harassing like that. And of course, Dhritarashtra, they were illegally on the throne, basically. Yudhisthira was the proper emperor, but they were, like Banu Swami, he gives the, even though Dhritarashtra might have been an expert administrator, it was basically a Surya Varnashram. Krishna wasn't in the centre. So, but ultimately, because they were a burden on the earth, he wanted them removed. So in that way, the battle, etc., was arranged so that it all be removed.
Okay, so in this present day, we have a lot of demonic marriages. So why doesn't Krishna step up and make it a better?
Well, he has appeared in his holy name, the Sankirtan movement. So we're the soldiers in the Sankirtan army. So by their influence, the demoniac influence will ultimately be destroyed.
So what you're saying is he doesn't personally come again to somehow have those people killed. He just has the Sankirtan mission of chanting Hare Krishna to try and uplift.
Well, that's my understanding. Of course, there's the thought he comes in influence of time, that everybody is destroyed by time. But it's not a particularly pious place at the moment. Even so-called good people are engaged in sinful activity in so many ways. They need to receive the karma of their activities. So therefore, you'll take place in a country or an area with so much conflict, so much corrupt government, as to receive, the results of your impious activities. I mean, we are in Kali Yuga. But as long as we stay under the umbrella of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, we won't, we'll be protected from most of that.
Well, we just had some devotees killed in Ukraine. They were part of the umbrella, so it maybe is a spiritual
Well, I mean, that's like get out of jail free card. You know, they've served and Krishna has liberated them. You know, so we can't understand. We have to understand it's like they've been killed. Why would Krishna allow that? You know, they're devotees and they were destined to leave at that time, and you know, no more suffering for them. Yes, Krishna Kishan.
I've got a question. It's a common discussion. It's also Prabhupada and Acharyas tell us that Krishna technically doesn't come to the things, he comes to the pleasure of the devotees.
Yeah.
This is my confusing history of things, earthquakes and whatever.
Yeah.
So that's not really the main reason he comes. The question is, can we conclude that if Kunti would have kept Karna a secret, would he have been the rightful heir, being the older brother of Yudhishthira?
Yeah, well, Yudhishthira, when he heard that actually Karna was his older brother, he was so disappointed. Why didn't you tell me? I would have been so happy to make him the emperor, and myself and our other brothers would have served him in that way. That was his response. So at that point he cursed Kunti that women aren't able to keep secrets anymore. So, but yeah, he was so that was in the Mahabharata. That's what he mentions, that he would have been so happy to have Karna as the emperor and served him as his older brother. Yes.
I don't know if I heard this right, but
Did you say that the Pandavas were born after Pandu had after he passed away?
Yeah, there was no heirs to the throne, so that was the problem.
But what would people think then? How did Kunti happen?
So,
I don't know. I don't know. For some reason, I always thought they were born while he was still on the planet, and so it looked like family, you know.
no, because Pandu was cursed because he killed, I think, the Brahmin and his wife. They were engaged in union, and they cursed him that when you try to approach your wife, you would die also. So that's why there was no heirs. But he did die when he approached Madhya, overcome by desire, and at that point he left his body. So there was no sons. So Kunti revealed actually she's got that mantra. She can call on devas. So in that way, that's when the Pandavas were born.
Yeah, but just as Kunti gave Karna away because it was out of marriage, then Pandu had left his body. Wouldn't she look like she slept with someone else?
So say that again, sorry. But this is before she was married, before she even met Pandu.
I understand that, but you said the children came after Pandu had passed away.
Yes.
So did Kunti then look a bit, what would the word?
No, not after his passing.
Wasn't after? Oh, okay. Sorry. So she must have approached the demigods because Pandu couldn't conceive.
Pandu actually, she told him about it. Pandu's actually requested.
Okay. So I've got the chronology mixed up. Sorry, that's my.
to me,
Yeah.
I think she's looked like a prostitute. If her husband's passed away, she's got these kids,
Yeah. Okay. So now I've got the.
Her husband told her to use it.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yeah, no, so I've got the chronology wrong, sorry. So Pandu was present, but he couldn't conceive himself because of that curse. Yeah, sorry, that's my fault. Yeah, because Duryodhana at one point, he did criticise Draupadi, that you've got five husbands, I'm a better husband, what's one more anyway? He sort of tried to put her character down like that. But anyway, that was a special arrangement. She had prayed to Lord Shiva 5 times, could I have a good husband? As a result, she got 5 good husbands. Yeah. But she was she's presented as the ideal wife, that she's, you know, able to satisfy 5 husbands. So a lot of, you know, other wives, they would approach her, you know, how do you do that? Please give me some advice. Like that. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.